Hello everyone, my name is Fox. This video is my review on the Steam Deck. I can finally talk to you guys about everything about this. It's a really awesome device. I totally recommend getting it. This review isn't going to be very long because very long videos no one really watches. So I'm going to try to be as quick as possible on this. What really matters here? Let's talk about performance first because I want to get that out of the way. The Steam Deck versus the Aya Neo and the Win 3, the high end of stuff. What does that do? When we take a look at it, Doom Eternal is one game that I found where we see just a drastic difference in performance. The Steam Deck is doing nearly double the performance of the Win 3, and the Win 3 is using more power than the Steam Deck is. The Aya Neo is using a good amount more power, still a lot less. It's also 1.8 times more powerful than the Aya Neo. That number comes up often. It's what I said 8 months ago. 1.7 to 1.8 times more performant. Obviously, this is GPU bound, right? We should exclude the Zen 2 because CPU to CPU, they're the same thing. So it's obviously understood that GPU-wise is where all the performance difference is. Now, that's not to say that's how it's always going to be. I showed you the Forza Horizon 5 video, and those were pretty much neck and neck. And that is because Forza Horizon 5 just really isn't that well optimized on the Steam Deck yet. However, if we take a look at other games like Tomb Raider, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the performance difference is closing the gap on the Win 3 if we start spending a little bit more power. However, we are still more performant on the Steam Deck, and that is a recurring theme that is going to happen here. I'm going to be taking a lot of different looks in other videos about performance differences, and I'll show you some game clips inside this video as well, but I really want to try to keep this really small. So, we got the Win 3 and the Aya Neo out of the way. What about the Switch? We're going to take a look at some image quality differences between the Steam Deck and the Switch. So here is Witcher 3 on the Switch, and I'm going to compare that. Same scene on the Steam Deck. You can see a massive difference in image quality as well as a huge boost in frame rate. Likewise, if we take a look at Doom Eternal, now Doom Eternal is one of those impossible ports for the Switch. Here's what it looks like on the Switch, and here's what it looks like on the Steam Deck. Alright, so that's just a huge difference on both sides, right? Between the high-end for Win 3 and Aya Neo Next, and then on the Switch side. So we know the comparison, Steam Deck wins pretty much everywhere. I know that I'm going a little bit fast here, but I really want to try to condense as much information as possible in this review. I will be showing other videos and game demos in other videos. I'm going to also be showing them in this video as well, but I'm really trying to squeeze how much I'm getting in here. Now that we know the comparison between the Aya Neo Win 3 on the high end and how it competes at the best case and also on the worst case, it's either at best we're doing as good as those platforms, or we're just blowing them out of the water. And then on the Switch side, we're matching it on battery life, but then just having way better image quality and frame rate. So it's a league of its own, okay? I gotta make that clear. It's a league of its own. So now let's compare. There's the 64 gig model, the 256 model, and the 512 gig model. Largely what that comes down to is the 512 gig storage, but also the anti-glare coating, the anti-glare etching on the screen. That is some top-notch stuff. I love it. Big thing for me is that the anti-glare is a benefit to me, but also it is fingerprint resistant, so that when you're touching it, you can't actually see it when you're using it, versus glass screens where it kind of gets smudged up and it gets really annoying to look at. For what it's worth, I still love the $400 model. The reason I love it is because SD cards, you just put it in and you take one out and it just loads up the games instantly. If there was a new update and it has to re-download shaders and stuff, it'll do that in the background. But it's so fast and rapid that it's just alarming how awesome that is. So that's pretty much it. Like, in my mind, you either get the $650 model or you get the $400 model. I think both are amazing, and it's up to you which one you want to get. Now let's talk about SteamOS in general. Now SteamOS, there's a ton of features that we have to talk about. For instance, the ambient light sensor. When extra light is coming in, it actually dynamically raises the basement on the minimum brightness, so that basically it's making sure that you don't go below a certain brightness when it's too bright around you, and you can always just raise it if you wanted to. Save state. Oh, save states. This is a huge one. So there was someone that mentioned this to me, and I was almost not going to include this in the review, but I did. So save states work in a few different ways. Mostly if you're just going to be playing on a handheld, you're not going to have a problem. But if you go out and about where you don't have internet access and you come back and you do, you can very quickly just click sync saves, and you'll just push your saves to the cloud. It's built into it. It's super simple. Outside of that, if you're playing on another platform and then you try to sync up those, there will be instances where it tells you that there's a discrepancy, and then it gives you a choice of either keeping the save cloud version or the local one. I wish that there was some way that there could be some versioning so that you can do some A/B testing in case you just weren't aware what one is the proper save file for you. I mean, like when you really think about it, it's like all of the features that Steam already has is on the Steam Deck. For instance, streaming's there. You could just start up your game. So if in this instance I am playing on my home PC and I'm streaming from my home PC to my Steam Deck, in this particular arrangement it takes around 8.5 watts of power, so you're looking at a little bit over 4 hours of battery life, 4.5 hours of battery life with streaming. Unfortunately, because of how things are, the Chrome browser is in there now, but it came in at the 11th hour, and it also has, there's a bunch going on. I will have to show you other streaming stuff at a later date. I can't really show you much more other than the Steam Play stuff at the moment. More or less, though, control-wise and latency is what you would expect. Speaking of the controls, all right. Speaking of the controls, now this is something that I don't really find myself to be an authority figure on, and I will speak about it as best I can. Steam Input and the new features that are available on the Steam Deck and how much control is there. It's mind-boggling, and it's going to require a whole video of itself, and I don't really think that I'm the person that should be making that specifically, but like you can do so much stuff, and like just for instance, I made TATE Mode available on the Steam Deck. So here's Ikaruga where I'm playing, and I just changed around the left analog stick to be the directional pad in the way it should be in this orientation, and I'm using the underside trigger buttons as I rearrange those to be my action buttons, and then you can see it just playing just fine. There's been a thing on analog sticks on other handhelds, and there's always been how the analogs feel is one thing. How the analog input works in a software layer is a whole other ball game, and Steam Input just knocks it out of the park. So we care about dead zones and how it sticks to cardinal directions. Very minimal dead zones, full range of complete analog. It's ridiculous, and it's like 32,000 steps of degrees of like analogness. It is insane. So when you think about how involved the Steam Input part of it is, it's top tier. It's the upper echelon of controls. I will say that the D-pad is just okay. I'll get more into that later on in the review when I talk about things that I don't like about the Steam Deck. Rumble is actually emulated from the haptics, the two haptics that are on the Steam Deck itself. And it does a pretty good job of that, considering what it's doing. And like even when you're using the triggers, when you press the triggers, the haptics kind of flick where you press on the trigger. It gives you this, it does give a semblance that the haptics is right behind it. It's actually really cool. But when you place your thumbs on the trackpads, any Rumble emulation gets fully absorbed into your thumb and will cancel out all Rumble emulation. So it's kind of weird. For me, it's not that big of a deal because I'm more of an analog dominant player as opposed to trackpad. But if you find yourself really liking trackpad play, I'd probably say to disable Rumble, which is simple to do in the quick access menu. Last thing I want to talk here about the controls is that when you are in the BIOS level, when there is no Steam detected, when Steam is not detected, the controllers can figure back to like what they call lizard mode, which some people have called, and I'll start using as well. Basically, the controls turn into like a mouse. A becomes enter, B is escape, and then moving around is actually pretty kind of intuitive, even in the BIOS. It's really super cool. Installing Windows is very, very simple. Again, the screen is a portrait-based display, so there are other implications on playing older PC games on Windows, and I've done a video on that prior, so you should probably take a look at that to kind of get an understanding of what would be necessary to play games in that, especially with full-screen optimizations that come into play. That's a whole other segment, but it's really cool how it dynamically switches based on what is detected automatically. So when it doesn't see Steam and it doesn't see the Neptune controller, it defaults to this kind of base mouse hardware state, and it's great for being able to control BIOS or early OS interaction by using the touchscreen alone as well as the controllers. It's pretty wild. Alright, so there's still a ton more to talk about the Steam Deck. There's going to be a lot of reviews coming out, so I don't want to go too crazy in this because I still have to talk about the Quick Access Manager, I still have to talk about TDP, I still have to talk about clock controls, but that's going to be in a separate video, and I did not want to conclude in this review. I wanted to try to really keep this really, really small. Let me talk to you about the things that I don't like. For how large this device is now, again, I don't care how big this device is. It's fine for me. But it is the largest handheld out there now. And despite the fact that this is the largest handheld, it has one of the smallest batteries that are available. Like even compared to the Win 3, which has a 46 watt-hour battery, has 15% more capacity, but it is way smaller. So how in the world, just what? Like I said before, Rumble emulation is actually really good. However, If you put your thumbs on the thumb pad, it totally absorbs all that rumble emulation right into your digits, and it kind of just feels weird at that point. So it's really cool, but it has caveats. The last thing that I want to talk about, and this is probably like the biggest thing that's like a negative, not every game works on SteamOS right now. Now you can install Windows, and I'm going to have a video on how to install Windows. I'm just waiting on GPU drivers still. I'm literally doing this video Thursday, so you're seeing this Friday. I don't have drivers yet. Hopefully I get them tomorrow, and then I'll be able to do Windows stuff afterwards. The Steam Deck and SteamOS that runs on this platform, Steam Deck is more than just a handheld, and SteamOS is more than just Arch Linux. This is the beginning. Like, all right, so the Van Gogh SoC that is on the Steam Deck is what I consider to be the actual base of good performance. Now, I showed you other performance, and it's like, oh my god, that's amazing. From everyone's point of view, this is actually just barely good enough, right? Because it's 800p and we're doing 60, 800p 60 in some games. In some things, we have to do 800p 30. So in some instances, there is a defeat here that the chip is just barely good enough for the mainstream audience. Because when they hear PC gaming, they think the upper echelon of everything. This machine is outrageously amazing. What works in SteamOS right now, it cannot be understated how simple it is when it works. You just click install and you click play and you're going, and it just works. Elden Ring is working day one. Valve is working overtime to make sure that the hottest, latest, newest games are gonna work day one. Where we are right now and where we're gonna look at SteamOS and Steam Deck in a few years from now, this is gonna seem like it's kind of like different worlds. Where they've come to at this point is impressive. I really can't recommend it more. It's such a good machine, and I wouldn't really recommend using Windows on it, to be honest. I've been saying this a lot. The Steam Deck is more than just a handheld, and SteamOS is more than just Arch Linux. It is the most console-like PC I have ever used in my life. I'm really trying my best to kind of wrap this up, but it's been years and years of development to make playing PC games as easy as pressing a button. It is sensationally easy for me to recommend the Steam Deck. This quite literally is the beginning of a new generation. As always, guys, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.